to this Striker MLS podcast where we talk about all of the Texas MLS teams. I'm Chris Bills, filling in for John Arnold, hosting this, driving this ship. And I'm actually here in Dallas, so it works out pretty well. Victor Victor Ariza is in Houston, and he'll have the breakdown of last night's Houston Dynamo loss to LAFC. We're going to talk about FC Dallas clinching the playoffs, Austin FC securing that second spot in the West. Lots of stuff to go over. I think we'll touch a little bit about on the Austin FC RSL game midweek. But Victor, first of all, late night last night. How you doing? How you hanging in?
Yeah, like you said, you're in Dallas. I'm going over what happened in LA. I think we're all over the place here on the strike.
That's a good
No,
way
but
to put it.
but it is getting to the final stretch here. It's a little weird now, right? Getting into the international break, before the last two games are played, especially for Houston that has already been eliminated and is just kind of waiting to see what happens. But obviously, like you mentioned, it's I think the turnaround for the Texas teams, at least for 2 out of 3, came true, which that's a pretty good return, right? Considering what all three of them had pretty forgettable seasons. Obviously, Austin was in an expansion year, but the other two were sides that were trying to get back to their prior success. FC Dallas finally does it, and then Austin, of course, secures a home playoff match as well, and clinches during the week, like you said, during the RSL game. So there's plenty to talk about on there, and it's while Houston's a little bit in despair, I think I think even then overall, and the changes coming down here, and overall Dallas, Austin, um, it is a remarkable turnaround a little bit for the Texas sides.
Yeah, let's start in Frisco because I think it's like you said, it's a remarkable turnaround for them. Big deal for them to clinch. Not the best match out in San Jose, but
Oh
Paul
no.
Arriola gets sent off toward the end, kind of a weird moment. And Nico Estevez sticking up for his guy. I'm not sure, Victor, if you had a chance to see that play, but we'll get into that a little bit. But FC Dallas. Um, gets the opener from Hader Obrian in the 16th minute. Jeremy Bovace's penalty cancels it out, and you know, watching back the highlights, it looked like FC Dallas was really on the front foot for most of the second half. Um, you know, but they're a little beat up right now. Jesus Ferreira didn't start in this one. He was sick to start. Came in, didn't really provide much. Alan Velasco's out with a thigh injury, and I think that's probably the main thread from this one is FC Dallas needing to get healthy. This international breaks probably comes at a good time for them, and I just think this attack, it seems like, is not quite clicking at the rate that it was earlier in the season. They've got a lot of the ball in a lot of these matches, but they're just not making a ton of it. Victor, do you think that we be concerned about FC Dallas going into the playoffs, or is it just a matter of getting these guys healthy, getting everybody fit, and trust Nico Estevez to get all the pieces in the right places?
Yeah, I think it's that second one, like you said. It can't be lost again that it is a way or remarkable in the sense of where they were last year, right? It kind of all over the place. Now they have a defined style, right, against Nico Estevez. They did go out and get a big signing in Velasco, right? And like you said, maybe because of what we saw earlier in the year, it just seems like this attack still has more to give. Obviously, they got Leggett
Hmm.
too to help things out. Pomako has been here and there. He hasn't truly come back to his best. So I think, yeah, I think when you look at the limit of this FC Dallas side, there's still, I think there is still a ceiling that they haven't reached. But um, the first step was qualifying for the playoffs, getting back to the postseason. It looked for a while now that it was going to happen. They finally make it official. They're the third team in the West, which I think that in itself is a big turnaround as well. Might have even finished second, or we're looking like they might finish second if Boston stumbled here. But ultimately, it looks like now the next step will be trying to secure a home playoff match in these last two games. Like you said, we have to take into account too, Ferreira, Riola, like they probably have the World Cup on their minds, in the
Yeah.
back of their heads. I mean, that's a not want to say big distraction, but I mean it is a huge moment coming up. And it's not to slight the MLS tournament or the MLS Cup, but I mean that's obviously something that a lot of players in this league are kind of looking towards. That makes this a pretty abnormal season. But I think all those factors considered, I mean, they're heading to a good place. Like I said, especially for here in Houston and comparing it. I mean, this is a difference the right coaching change makes. We all year long in the striker, you've been able to read what the changes of Nico Esteves have been. Obviously, a big change in goalkeeper as well, right? Going to Martin Paz. Um, you know, just all these moves coming into fruition. I mean, they are a little scary heading into the playoffs. I think, considering that they're not arriving in their best moment, they haven't reached that potential that we all expect from them.
Yeah, but that's the kind of the thing across. You look across the Western Conference, and maybe we'll get into LAFC a little bit when we talk about the Houston game a little bit more in depth. But they're starting to kind of find their footing. It seems like everybody though has gone through a little bit of these stretches, heading into the playoffs, and I don't think that it's necessarily just FC Dallas. And you mentioned a good point. I mean, Paul Arriola and Jesus Ferrer both heading across the pond to join up with the U.S. men's national team. You got to think that in a match that ultimately isn't going to decide whether FC Dallas makes the playoffs or probably not even whether they get a home match or not. You got to think that that's a little bit on their mind, and maybe that feeds in a little bit to Paul Arriola picking up that red card, and maybe it's maybe it's nice for him to get a rest on the back end of this international break. A lot of travel, he won't have to worry about getting necessarily everything right for FC Dallas's next match on the back end of that. But what do you think about the approach of FC Dallas, Jesus Pereira, Paul Arriola, going on this international break, having to focus in for a few days here with the U.S. men's national team for really what personally for them has to be the biggest moment of their year, and then they're going to come back and lock into the playoffs, I'm sure. But I guess how much do you think that has the potential to either add or subtract from what FC Dallas is doing in the
I
chemistry
think
they
it
have?
only adds. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big jump. You're going. We know what the talent of the U.S. roster right now, to go over and join some of those guys, kind of. It is a bit of a clear your head moment, right? But to talk to some of the guys having success in Europe, getting a bit of a refresh, a boost in batteries, and really, I think maybe a motivation to. Um, I mean, I'm sure there is like the friendly competition, right? You're testing yourself and training against some of these guys, and you're like, hey, I'm maybe not too far off, or it just kind of brings the best out of you. Now they're going to come back to this FC Dallas team. All the playoff clincher has already been secured, so that pressure's off. Like you said, Adriola's getting one extra game. Trying to focus on getting everything clicking and heading in the best form possible. I think like you said, other teams are still trying to find their best form as well. But I think with this Dallas team, it is a little scary that we haven't truly seen it, right? Like, yeah, I think the
Yeah,
other teams it's
you say
fizzled
that,
off with.
or we've been saying that. I think it is worth mentioning though that Dallas was just coming off of back-to-back wins over Minnesota United and LAFC. Not the best performance in an LAFC match, of course, with LAFC. I think down to 10 men for most of that, but um, I
But they've
think
been in
maybe that
spurts.
that
Is my point.
yeah,
Like it has,
exactly,
like
yeah.
they've won games based on a couple key moments, and sure you can say that about everyone, but it's not. I don't think we've seen them put together a full 90-minute performance, right? It's
Just
like the
put
Minnesota
somebody,
game. I mean,
yeah,
it was in a couple of minutes. They just
put somebody
boom,
in the
boom,
dirt,
boom.
right? Yeah, that's kind
Yeah,
of what I've been thinking about this team is I've seen them do it for spurts, and you see how good that this attack can be. Just kind of waiting on them to have sort of like that 4-1 performance that Austin had, or some of the matches that
yeah, like really flex their
or
muscles.
some of the matches that LAFC has that they just kind of put somebody in the dirt and rub their face in it, and you're kind of waiting to see that still from FC Dallas. But let's go over the two key moments and then move on to Austin. Two key moments. The ball bounces up, hits Marco Farfan. Didn't really seem like there was a good angle of it on replay. Did you have an opinion on this? Whether that should have been a penalty kick in the first half that ultimately allowed San Jose to pick up a point this match?
No, I can't say. I got to go look at it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, I don't think anybody did really on the replay. It's just kind of like a ball in the box. There's not a good angle. Ball, I guess, hits Marco Farfan in the thigh, bounces up, hits him in the arm. I thought it was a little harsh just based on where the shot was taken from. But obviously early in the match, FC Dallas moves on. They got plenty of chances. And then the red card, Paul Aurelio putting his hands up in Jamiro Montero's face, catches him maybe with an elbow, maybe with the forearm. Nico Estevez sounds like he was pretty hot about it after the match. Didn't really understand why it was a red card. And, do you buy the coach's argument there, or is that I think
Uh,
he
uh,
definitely had his hands up there.
yeah, no, like I mean, I think the argument there is if you're gonna red card Ariola, why don't you red card both of them, right? Because it's not. I mean, the way this kind of happens, Ariola kind of gets shoved in the back, right, and then he kind of
Sure.
throws his hand back. I guess that's my argument on there. If you're gonna give a card to one of them, that's one where look at the entire situation, right, and penalize both. Otherwise, there's it's pretty even to me. That's why I in a way, yeah, I do agree with Estevez there.
Yeah, I mean the hands on the face thing is always kind of a lightning rod, just because that seems to be the criteria is if the hands touch the face at all, and I think we can all see intent and see that Paul Arriola wasn't necessarily. It's not like he slapped him across the
Right.
face or really swung at him, but he did catch him in the head. So I guess that's why he gets the red card. And another thing I wanted to mention from this match, we move on to Austin FC, is Bernard Kamungo making his FC Dallas debut in the 70th minute of this match. Of course, if you're a Striker Texas, or if you were a original the Striker Texas subscriber, you'll know about Bernard Kamungo. John Arnold did a great piece on him last year. Just a tremendous story. He was born in a refugee camp in Tanzania and has made his way to North Texas, worked his way through North Texas SC, and to see him make his way at first team debut, and he'll be getting that experience right as FC Dallas makes this playoff run. So big moment for him, and just wanted to give him his family a quick shout out, and also John for being on the top of that story ahead of everybody else. That's the kind of stuff you can find on the Striker. But one thing, we'll move on to Austin FC here. Two matches in the week for Austin. They pick up a big win, get off the snide. First hat trick in Austin FC history for Musa Jite against RSL midweek, and then come back with a rotated squad. 1-1 is the score between Austin and Nashville on the weekend. And Victor, we're in a position now where FC Dallas fans and Austin FC fans can start arguing with each other about when they'd like their home playoff game. People are
Yeah.
trying to put their schedules together, and that's a question I keep asking is when can I block this off? It's going to be Saturday, Sunday, or Monday of that third weekend in October. But that's not a conversation we thought we'd be having this time of year, is it?
No, it's exciting times, right? I think also the big maybe conversation piece during the week was Austin FC, right, putting out that video of the predictions earlier on in the season. Josh
Yeah.
Wolf showing that to the players, but I mean, it is, also I think we all kind of expected a turnaround in year two for Austin FC. Maybe not this dominant start that they got at the beginning of the year, and kind of maintaining that the way they have. But I think once we got to, maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, and we started seeing, all right, there is some consistency here. Obviously, Drew's having a good season. This team, when it's at home, it's playing well. Even on the road, they've been playing pretty good results. Yeah, there might be a little more to the season, right? I think, and then it just kind of started to evolve to, all right, when are they going to clinch already, right? When are they going to clinch that home playoff game? And it all happened in the span of a week. So I think a big relief also for the Austin FC fans. Like you said, now it's time. Now it's time to start planning and seeing if they can get to that next level and not just be a one and done team.
Well, to that point, I think that you mentioned the video of Josh Wolf with the piece of paper, laminated piece of paper, holding it out almost like it's like on fire. Uh, the way he's holding that
I'm
thing,
surprised he didn't light
he's
it
like he's like
in the
he's
video.
barely even touching it. I'm surprised he's not wearing gloves. But it's all the MLSsoccer.com writers' predictions for the season, and everybody was pretty low on Austin FC as far as where they would finish. I think your point is well taken, though, that we all thought this team had potential to take a jump forward, but it's the MLS Western Conference, and anything can happen. And you look at those standings, the gap between I think it is third and 10th or 11th right now is pretty tight. And so 11th place, where a lot of people had Austin FC, felt like a slap in the face to those guys. Ethan Finley had a good quote in the notebook that Phil West and I put together after the Nashville match, and he said, a lot of people I think a lot of people laughed at me when I chose to come here. It's late in your career. You want to win something? And Ethan Finley said, he had the belief in this group and Josh Wolf from his experiences with a lot of the guys in the locker room that this was a club that was ready to win now. And I think that's been the mentality that everybody across the team has kind of taken. And it's kind of something we can all sit and laugh at on the outside. It's like this. Doubt fuel or whatever you want to call it that they've taken on, but it's certainly worked this year for this group that they feel like everybody was sort of against them or doubting what they could do, and they've come out from moment one and really shown it. And it's been across the board too. A big story from the midweek match, Austin FC needing a win, kind of a sloppy first half against RSL, and then Musa Jite comes on the pitch for the last I think it was 40 minutes 35 minutes, came on in like 56, and scores 3 goals in the span of 20 minutes. Just incredible stuff. And afterward, we found out, you can check this story out also on the Striker, is he's had a lot of personal struggles this year. He lost a grandmother earlier this year, lost a brother earlier this year, and in August, his first son was born in Senegal, and he's yet to be able to go visit and see his son. So 3 goals, and I asked him if he had
First
anybody.
hat trick in Austin FC history, by the way.
Yeah, 3 goals, first hat trick in Austin FC history, and he dedicates those to, of course, his grandmother, his brother, and his newborn son. So pretty cool story there. You can check it out. Some quotes from him, some quotes from Ruben Gabrielson about what kind of locker room presence he's been, and the fact that everybody at this club knows what he's been going through, and the fact that he's continued to show up day after day, sometimes being 2 rungs below even getting on the pitch, sometimes not even being on the match day roster. And he's really kind of making a surge here. He showed what he could do, to
Right.
really just bully the RSL back line. And here's a guy who, if he can get in form, I think could be a real asset during the playoffs for Austin FC.
Right. And then, and really, I mean, again, remarkable story, but putting that aside, he's had the luxury to not have to, provide goals, right, in bunches, and,
Sure.
and be maybe the guy that Austin FC depends on up top. Rudy is obviously, taking that role throughout the bigger part of the year, because this team is well built, because it is deep, because they did make certain decisions in the offseason to clarify a lot of the situation in Austin, right? I mean, I think you documented it well throughout the year. Going all in on Drusy, right? Finding a resolution to what they were going to do between, in the midfield with him and Pochettino, right? I mean, I think that was that's a big part of what the season ended up being. The start at the beginning of the year, right? They had a big April where they had 4 consecutive wins. To kind of put on the back end of those 2 beginning wins at home. So all these things, right, and maintaining it throughout the entire year. I think, no, this is a remarkable season. I think everybody will be disappointed if it doesn't, kind of evolve into a playoff win, right? But there is still some struggles as well with this Austin team that we've seen in the past weeks. Maybe because of the quality of the opposition, we've started to see Then face some playoff teams. I think the Salt Lake wins is big because that might be a potential opponent for them. This draw against Nashville, they've still, there's a little bit something there. I think they had a difficult game against Portland, but other than that, I mean, I think this is a weird time. I think for Austin, it probably wouldn't have it any other way, but
It is
I
because
think overall.
To your point, I think it's sort of a weird time because they didn't expect to have these matches that are essentially these are get ready matches. And I thought that it was interesting the way Josh Wolf used this Saturday match, rotating his squad, even though there's this international break coming up, giving some of the key guys a rest, but also motivating some of those guys like Musa Jite, like Johan Valencia, like Johan Romagna, who have been, fighting for time all season long, who a lot of the fans thought would have a bigger role in this squad, and who've been, quite frankly, I think kind of, just grinding and not getting the reward. And they put out I thought a pretty good performance. They didn't quite, have the finishing touches to get the victory on Saturday night, but Johan Romagna played really well. Johan Valencia played really well, and those guys were just beaming ear to ear to be able to put in a performance like that to start at Q2 Stadium. And I think that was an important moment for Josh Wolf to give them leading into the playoffs, because those are guys you might need off the bench. Say if you get a red card down the line somewhere, or if somebody gets a slight knock, you can't quite go, or you just need to use some pieces off the bench. I think keeping the whole squad motivated. Another thing they're going to do during this international break is they're not taking it completely off. They're going to play a game against El Paso. We think at St. David's Performance Center that's going to be behind closed doors. But just to keep that game cadence, and I doubt Sebastian Drucci is going to go play 90 minutes in that thing, right? It's going to be a lot of these guys that are kind of on the fringe that are trying
Right.
to kind of work their way into form at the right time. And I think that it's been really interesting to see.
Get Rodney Reda some minutes in that game.
Yeah, a club that probably thought they'd be scrapping, fighting to get into the playoffs at this point in the year has put together a plan so that they've got, hopefully all these guys firing. The one thing that's a little bit concerning at this point for me, for Austin FC, is the fact that Sebastian Drucci looks like he's lost half a step. Whether it's the groin injury a month ago, this like slight knee injury, the way that he's chasing balls, he's just not quite, as explosive as he was early in the season. I wonder if this 2-week break might kind of freshen him up, and or if maybe he's carrying a knock that's going to last through the postseason, and that could be a big deal for Austin if he's not at 100%. I think that takes some of the luster off of what Austin can do in the playoffs. But it'll be interesting to see how they use this stretch, how they come back out of this international break, go to Vancouver, and then come back home against Colorado, and then see where they line up as far as the playoffs go. They'll be the number 2 seed in the West. FC Dallas, we think, will likely be the number 3. And Houston Dynamo, what seed are they looking at, Victor? No. I'm sorry. I gotta stop making those jokes.
They're trying not to be last place in the West, and I think that'll be unfortunately that'll be an improvement of what's been going on in the past few years. But yeah, it's they got an E by their name. They're not celebrating at all.
Yeah. Houston Dynamo goes to LAFC, Bank of California Stadium. They lose 3-1. It was 1-1 though, Victor, late in the first half. 2 penalties for LAFC put them on top at halftime. I was watching. I thought that Houston looked like they had some fight in them, but just didn't have the quality. What was kind of your takeaway from this match? What you saw?
That first stretch, I think was pivotal. You can't give up a penalty, right? I think Griffin Dorsey got the better of on that play. Clear penalty. Vela converts it as easily as you'd like a player of his caliber to do it. And LAFC, without doing much, is up 1-0 right after 8 minutes. But after that, I thought Houston, sort of got into the game a little bit, was more composed, started having more of the possession, started being really the better team. Again, generating dangerous chances, which is, I know they've said they think they've probably done, but I think, yes, they've generated more chances, but they haven't generated more clear, real dangerous chances to put teams on their heels, right? And I think obviously a great ball by Alberto Carrasquilla to Corey Baird. It's a moment of the first half for Houston. Get some 1-1 after that. I mean, there's still, again, other opportunities where maybe if it's just a little bit more quality, could have taken a stranglehold of this game despite that opening penalty. And then, right before the half, again, just more bad luck or just self-inflicted mistakes. Um, the rule, right? I mean, it hits your hand. It's essentially a penalty. I don't know if you got to start doing training where you got to tell players to to start tying their hands behind their back or something. But ultimately, it's another penalty for LAFC 2-1, and I think after that halftime break, they try to get back in the game in the second half. They were a little bit creative with like the first corner out. They had some chances, but um, and again, some people might focus on that play in the first half also that wasn't called their way for a penalty. But ultimately, I think over the course of the 90 minutes, you saw LAFC just had a deeper squad. They had more
Yeah.
quality. I don't know how much you put into the 3 games in just a little bit over a week because LAFC played on Tuesday as well. They'd essentially been on the same schedule. But it's just the guys coming off the bench, right? When you got Theo and you got Bale coming off the bench, and the Dynamo have guys that haven't shown their best. I think this season, the past couple of seasons, overall, it just goes to confirm that even with a good game plan, which Kenny Bundy has done to his credit, the quality of the roster isn't there to compete for the 90 minutes. And I mean compete in the sense of win. I don't mean just of hanging around
Yeah.
and be a competitive game. I mean
But
actually go out
we've
there and
seen
get it.
that though. I think I was impressed, and I was in the stadium at PNC on Tuesday night when Houston beat New England Revolution 3-1. Good performance, I thought there. And uh, to me, last night's match, Sunday night's match, was a good reminder of how big of a deal it is that they were able to lock down Coca Carrasquilla, right, for the future, because that's a piece I think that Houston could build around.
Right.
And he's certainly showing the buy-in to not be mailing in performances this time of year. So I think that's been good to see.
Yeah, and the the tricky thing is that they haven't figured out a way, right? And maybe get him in both. Obviously, Herrera's been injured, but to get Hector Herrera and Carrasquilla, both on the field at
Right.
the same time. But I definitely think like those are two of your key pieces going forward to next year. Um, we're gonna see what they do with Darwin Quintero again in the off season, right? And where does he play into this midfield and if he's a piece for 2023, I believe. By the way, happy birthday! I think today he turns 35.
Oh
So
wow.
that's
Yeah.
so that's another issue there, right? Where I think that's a position that needs to be addressed because it's not like Memo Rodriguez is taking a stranglehold of that position. Every week I keep seeing like stats where it's he's probably been one of the better passers in MLS, but they haven't found a way to make this all work together. But I thought maybe from the 3 games, this one was probably the stretch where they had the better of LAFC was a little bit more impressive than obviously against lesser opposition, which we're in Kansas City that should have with one extra man maybe had one on the road and they didn't really do much, and Houston was actually the better team there, and then New England that we're starting to see probably not a playoff team and really left a lot to be desired with 2 guys like Carlos Gil and Gustavo Bo on the field. I mean, they didn't really provide a lot of danger. And credit to Houston, but I do think there is some of this. The teams maybe look at the Dynamo, look at the bottom of the table, think it's an easier game, and find out, it's not. And
Yeah.
LA ran into a little bit of that last night, but eventually, again, quality ran out. Quality won out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure it did. Um, Yeah, Victor, it was great to see you over in Houston. Great to but again, I'm waiting to see what this club does during the off season because they need a spark. We've talked about it, since we started the striker. I know you've been talking about it a lot longer than that. People like Glenn Davis and yourself waiting on this club to really, spark some magic during an off season, and hopefully this is the year that Houston gets that done. But Victor, I want to know what you're doing this with this international break. You got any big plans? You using this time for anything fun?
Yeah, no, we're gonna keep on trying to keep at it with the coverage on the striker. There are throughout the entire Dynamo system, there are 10 Dynamo players from all the way to the academy, all the way up to the first team. We're going to keep an eye on Hector Herrera, see how his injury is developing, because I imagine he's probably, if it's not too harsh, he may get some playing time with the Mexican national team. So that's something we're going to keep an eye on as well. There was a Texas Derby edition down in MLS Next Pro. Houston Dynamo won 2-0 over North Texas.
There you go. There you go.
Over at Houston Sports Park, so they're heading out to the playoffs. We'll keep an eye on them, and everything else as far as this coaching search and see what develops. Because Houston needs to get after it if they want to. I know people have maybe you're thinking it's a longer process, but I point up the road, FC Dallas coaching change, and there you go.
Yep. Somebody's got to keep the content buzzing. No, I got plenty of stuff planned for this week for Austin FC as well. I think Bill Western and I are putting the finishing touches on a mailbag. I've still got this Sebastian Drusi profile that I've been banging away at. I think this is probably the right time before this home stretch. So you can look for both of those pieces coming up, and also I'm taking some family time, so I'm gonna head later today, take a flight to Ohio, catch the Buckeyes against Wisconsin. So always,
there you go.
Always a little bit of Ohio in my heart. So it'll be a good week. Hopefully you guys at home are enjoying this international break, catching whatever national teams you root for, in hopefully a tune-up for a World Cup. And we'll be right here at the Striker documenting it all. So Victor Ariza, thanks so much for joining me this morning. We'll get John Arnold back in the mix soon, but hopefully he comes back safe and in one piece after his big weekend. I saw him screaming into a camera from the stands at the what match was it? That was Chivas America.
I think he was all over the place, but I saw one where he was at the Cruz Azul game, but then I also saw him at Puebla. But we'll see if we can get him back into the country. It looks like Ticketmaster might give him immigration issues.
Hopefully Ticketmaster is not running the passport process. That's all I got to say for John Arnold, because that would be a problem if so. But yeah, we'll get him back in here, get his pipes back hosting this thing, and you guys won't have to deal with me as much on the next episode of this podcast. But thanks for riding with us, and like I said, have a great week, everybody. We'll be back next week with more on the Striker, and keep it tuned to the website as well. Subscribe. That's the best way to support us, and